Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another video in this tutorial series. In this video, we're going to go ahead and add a disabled state to the button. And we're going to activate the button only when something is entered over here. All right. So as you can see right now, there is nothing over here. If I click on it, nothing happens. So I can go over here and enter a value. So let's go ahead. I enter 600 and then I go ahead and press enter to close it. And now the button gets active. And now I can click on it and release it. And then the animation happens. Right? So let's go ahead and see how to do this. All right, so let's go ahead and create the disabled state, which should be pretty straightforward. So I can click on the button and click here to go to the various states. And here I'm going to go ahead and choose a disabled state. All right. And now all I have to do is basically just update the colors. So I can come here to Figma and I can pick up these colors. So I'm just going to copy this color and then come here to play and paste that color over here. And then I can select the other one, copy that, and come here to select the bottom surface and then paste that color over here as well, right? So this is about it. This is going to be our disabled state, all right? So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and set up a logic saying that once the button has been pressed, quickly move on to the disabled state, all right? So I'm going to go back to our main screen and we're going to go to our interactions and our logic. So when I tap on the button, so we want to click on the button. Now when the button is pressed down, we want to obviously trigger the live animation, pass on the final score, and also we want to change the state of the button, right? So from this state, we want to change it to the disabled state. So what I will do is I'm going to click over here and I'm going to add a set state property. We're basically just we're setting the state of the component, okay? And here we want to target the self, which is basically the button is the trigger over here. So we want to target the button and we're going to change it to the disabled state, all right? And here I don't want any animation because I want it to be super quick. All right. Now we could go ahead and add a little bit of a delay. So let's say I add 0.1, just a super small delay, and set the duration to 0. So it takes a delay of 0.1 seconds and then does the animation, right? So that's fine. Okay. Now let's see how this looks. So I'm going to go ahead and bring back my phone. All right. So now if I go ahead and press start, you can see that it automatically gets disabled. And we also see here that we have this weird issue because the disabled state is actually transitioning to the hover state again, as you can see over here. So we want to prevent this button from happening. And we also want to make sure that the button should not be visible when the value here is nothing, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our buttons, okay? And here we basically want to disable it. And there is an option here called as user interaction. Now, if I turn this off and if I click on this, you can see that all of the object's interactions and any of its children interactions will be turned off. So if I turn this off, that means that I can no longer tap on this or I can't do any of the things over here, right? So if I come back over here, what I can do is I can click on the button that we have over here. By default, we need it to be in the disabled state, right? So when the animation starts, it needs to be in the disabled state, okay? And now if I bring in my phone again, and now as you can see, if I click on it, I'm actually clicking, you can see it's not moving. It's just where it is, right? But now we need to activate it when I add something here in the input field. So if I go to the main screen and if I open up the interactions over here, now at this point, when focus is ended, right? That means when I finish focusing on it, all right, I want you to go ahead and activate that button. So I'm going to go ahead and add a action over here. After this event is over, I want you to set the state, okay, of this button, of basically the button. So let's go ahead and choose the button back to the default state, okay? And here we can go ahead and add a little bit of animation if you want. We'll probably say 0.2, a very subtle animation, okay? So now let's see how this works. So I can go back, I can bring in my phone, all right? And so now if I click here and I press enter a value, let's say 100, and I now press this, you can see now it's active. And now if I click on it, it doesn't work. Now I don't know if this is a bug or not, but there is a way to solve this, all right? So what I can do over here is that if I come back here to our interaction mode, click on this, we can actually turn on that user interaction switch that we had turned off. So quickly to show you what I'm talking about. So if I click on the button over here and I click here, you can see here that this user interaction is actually turned off, but for the default one, it's actually turned on. So essentially it should work. I don't know why it's not working. I will probably let the people at Plano to see if it's a bug. But if you're facing this issue, there's a very easy solve. We can actually control that property. So we can come back to interaction mode. We can go ahead and choose the input field. And here we will add something called as user interaction. So set user interaction. We want to target the button and we just want to turn on the interaction because we are now returning back to the default state, right? So if I go ahead and close all of this up, let me close everything up. All right, I'm going to bring in my phone again. And now over here, if I go ahead and type something, let's say 100, and now it's active. And now I can actually press on the button because now it's interactive and release, and then it plays the animation, right? Pretty cool. Now there is one tiny issue with this. Let me explain. So if I just go back to design mode, click on this and move this and reset the animation. All right. Now, if I click on this, but I press enter without typing anything, the button here is still going to become visible. Now, the reason for that is because if I come here to our interactions, tap on the input field actually, we are telling it that whether or not I type something, the moment the focus is ended, just change the state. But now what we need to do is we need to define a condition that basically says, if the user didn't type anything or typed but removed everything, which means if the input field is empty and I close it, don't go back to the default state. Only if something is added in there, then you go ahead and reset to the default state. Now, what we need to do is we need to add this logic called as condition. Okay, and once we add this condition, we can then decide if there is something in the input field, do something. If there isn't, then do something else. So let's take an example here, right? So if we wanted to transition back to the default state and also enable to do it, that means that the number of characters in the input field should essentially be one or more than one, right? So we want to say, and I can actually, they have a really cool feature here where I can actually give some name to this, all right? So if number of characters, okay, or let's say number of numbers, right? If the number of numbers in the input field, all right, and then we add the condition over here saying that if it is greater than 0, then perform these two actions. So I'm going to click on this. So here I'll say string count. So string count. And basically what string count does is it lets you count the string, and essentially encode string is basically the text that you enter or basically the value or the number. So for example, as you can see here, it says returns the number of characters in a string. So basically a piece of text is what we call a string in code, and it returns the number of characters, right? So if the string count, and now I need to enter which string is this, right? So obviously our text field is called as score, all right? So our text field is called as score, all right? And here I want to say if it is not equal to 0, then basically perform these two actions, right? If it is 0, then you're not supposed to do anything. Don't change anything. But if it is not 0, go ahead and perform these two actions, which is basically set it back to the default state and activate the button so that I can tap on it. So here I'm going to enter is not equal to, so does not equal to 0, okay? Now, if I click this outside, everything looks fine, but there is a tiny error, which I believe seems like a bug with Play. But if I just select these two items and drag that over here, then now this makes sense. This is actually not correct. It should ideally throw an error, and I don't know why it's not throwing an error. It should ideally throw an error. What should actually happen here is if I go ahead and just, let's say I leave it like this, you can see it throws an error. And then here I enter score. It's not throwing an error. But this is wrong because what I need to do is the score is just the text field. What we need to say is the value of the text field. So here I should say score.value. So here you can say current value of the text field, right? Because here we have score.value. it needs to be that. How many characters is the value of the score field? All right. So it counts the number of characters, because if it is not 0, then it should perform these two actions, and essentially means that there is one or more characters, right? So now let's check this out and see if this works. So I'm going to go back again over here and I'm going to bring in my phone. Okay. So now if I go ahead and enter something, the keyboard is available. Let's say I type in something 100 and I press return, the button is activated. But if I open this up again and let's say I change it back to 0, okay, or basically not even 0, I remove everything and then I press enter. And as you can see here, it's not getting disabled, right? So we got to do a little bit of fixing. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the interactions and come over here. And what we need to do is we also need to define the else. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if this is a bug or not. But basically what I'm saying is if the value basically, or maybe I should change this to say if the characters, number of characters, let's say number of characters, maybe that's a better way to say this. If the number of characters is not equal to 0, then do this. But if it is 0, else is essentially if it is 0, then what you need to do. If it is 0, then it needs to be in the disabled state. So what I can do is I can just copy this set state and I can click here and just paste that set state. And we will just make sure that it is disabled and we can keep the animate on, right? And just one last thing, we want to make sure that this branch is actually not coming from here. We need to link it to the else state, right? So if I take this and drag that onto this, then we want to make sure that it's in the else state, right? So now let's go ahead and check this and see if this works. Okay. So let's bring up my phone. All right. So now I can press, click here. I can enter a value. So let's say 100. I press enter and it gets activated. I click on it again and now I remove the input field, make it 0 and I press enter. Then the button gets disabled. So this is definitely working. I can type in any number, press enter, it's activated. I remove it, it goes deactivated. Now if I enter the value 0, that's still a character. It's still 1 digit, but it's a value with just 1 digit. So if I press enter, 0 still counts because there is one number, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just clear this off and press return. Now, one of the things that you can usually observe, and this is basic interaction design, is when I start entering a digit, I don't have to actually press enter to activate this button. This button should actually become active the moment there is something, because think of like an input field that you're filling up or a form that you're filling up. You should be able to move forward by filling up the form without closing the keyboard, right? Now, the reason that this is happening is if we go to our interactions, all of this is being triggered based on the focus ended state. Instead, what if we do all of this calculation and logic and conditions based on when I'm typing on my keyboard, right? So let's go ahead and I'm going to add a new text field event, okay? And I'm going to move this above in the middle. Can I move this, rearrange this? Okay, looks like I can't, which is fine, I guess. And here I want to say when I am typing, do all this calculation and math, all right? So we're just going to go ahead and say while typing. And now I'm just going to select all of these items, okay? And I'm going to move set variable, which is basically calculating the value. And what this means is that when I'm typing, so this is updating the value and passing on and storing that information in real time, which is even better, right? I don't have to wait for the keyboard to close. The moment I type, the value gets updated. So here I can just take this and connect all of that with this over here, okay? So now when the focus ended, the only thing that's going to happen is that the screen is going to come down and the keyboard is going to close, right? That's the only thing that's going to happen. But when I'm typing, I want all of this to happen. I want you to pass on the value, basically store the value, and also do this condition, right? Now, what this basically means is when I'm typing, if play recognizes that there is a character, it will automatically update the button to be in the active state. So let's go ahead and check that out. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to bring in my phone again. And so now here, if I enter this, now basically what should happen, as I'm typing, everything should work accordingly. So let's check it out. So let's say if I enter 4, you can see it automatically updates the button because while I'm typing, it's doing all that calculation. And let's say I enter 400 and let's say I cancel it and then it gets disabled. This is typically how things work on a mobile app. If you open up any app and there's a disabled button and the moment you start entering, or if you're entering a valid phone number or an email ID or whatever it is, it throws an error while I'm typing. So the feedback that I'm getting as a user is real time. Now, let's check it out. So let's say I enter 650. Now, if I press start over here, you can see that the animation plays, which is correct. However, it's not resetting back to 0 and the keyboard is not going away. As you can see, the keyboard is still active. And you can see the text field here is also active. So what that basically means is when I press this button, we sort of need to assume that I finished typing and we need to close everything automatically and reset it back to how it was, which basically means I need to bring down the keyboard and I need to move this back down, right? So let's see how to do that. So I'm gonna come back over here, go to our interactions, open this up. And actually we don't go to the button this time because button is where the interaction is going to be. So here in basically the touch up, this is where we have everything. So we have the Rive input basically starting the animation, passing on the score, and then we have changing the state of the button to be disabled. Now to bring down the screen, all we need to do is set the position of this screen down to 0. Basically, we take this, what we have in the focus ended state, this property, which is basically translating Y position of this entire screen back to 0. When we close the keyboard, we just want to copy that. So I'm going to copy this, come down here back to the button, and I'm going to click on this and paste, right? So now this should just automatically close it. So let's go ahead and check it out. I'm going to go and bring back my phone again. Actually, can we actually do this when I have my phone? Okay, looks like we can do this. All right. So now let's go ahead and enter a value, let's say 100. And if I remove all the digits, it becomes 0, which is perfect. So now if I go ahead and press start, you can see that the animation happens, the keyboard comes down. But we have a couple of issues. One, as you can see, when I tap here on the disable button, it becomes active. So that's another thing that we have to solve. And also the keyboard over here is not yet closed. And you can see the input field is still active. And this should be pretty simple to solve. So if you come back here to the button, what we want to do is not only do we want to set property back down to 0 of the Y position, but we also want to dismiss the keyboard. So there is a feature over here. If I just search for keyboard, you can see there's an option called as dismiss keyboard. And all it does, it basically dismisses the keyboard, right? And we want to do it immediately. We don't really want a delay of it dismissing the keyboard. We just want it to happen super quickly, right? So let's check it out quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a number. So let's say 100. And now when I press start, you can see that the keyboard goes away. The input field is no longer active, but I still have this quick issue. Now let's understand why this issue is happening and then we'll be able to solve it. So I'm going to go ahead and just reset a couple of things. So just click here. Let's see if it resets. No, I need to go back and then I need to just do this. This is quite annoying. But that's fine, right? So let's see what's happening. At this point, we don't have an issue, right? Now I'm clicking over here and there's no issue. But when I click on this, all right, and maybe the best way to do this is if I open up the interactions, we can actually see what the issue is, all right? And if I come over here, right? So now it's in the focus began state, all right? The thing moved up and the logic is basically here, right? So let's say I enter 600. So now it's over here where it's in the default state and the user interaction is active. So what happened was that the user interaction, it got enabled at this point. And now when I close it, it's not getting disabled, which is why we have this issue. So to fix it, all we need to do here is if I came from here to here to here, and now I'm going back, essentially I'll end up over here if there is no characters. What I need to do is take this user interaction and then disable it. So I'm going to copy that, click here, paste, and maybe I paste it over here. And here I'm going to set it to disable, right? So now if we check it out, I'm going to type something. So let's say I enter 100. Now I'm over here. And now when I cancel, I'm over here, but also the button is now disabled. So now if I click on this, you can see it doesn't let me click. And I'm actually trying to click over here because it disabled the button the moment it did the calculation. It said, oh, the value is 0. And while I'm typing, do this calculation in real time at every digit I enter. And now it's back over here. So this is perfectly working. So now if I go ahead and enter 500 and I press start, it goes there. And here again, we have this issue, right? So we need to copy this thing. We need to go to the button where we added that button. And here we want to paste that over here as well. So now if we go ahead and try this one last time, it should work. So now here I'm clicking, it's not working. I enter a value and I cancel it. It's not working here again. I enter a value again. I play the animation and now here I'm not able to tap on it again, right? So now all of this is finally making sense. All right, so that's how you set up all of this interaction, and I hope you really enjoyed the series. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. See you guys in my next video. So then take care and bye-bye.